All right, it's Huskers Live on tap. It is our second one. I had to bust balls over there because Schaefer had to run and go grab a beer, but this is great. We're at Kros Strain. We are here at Kros Strain in La Vista. Very happy to be with our second Huskers Live on tap. Thank you for everyone who is joining us. Want to introduce ourselves. First of all, I am Nick Handley with Walnut Media and Boomer Radio. Grant Hansen as well with Walnut Media and Boomer Radio. And then we've got our esteemed panel, our experts. But we just want to say, you guys, you're more than experts. You're fantastic human beings as well. But we've got Brian Christopherson, Michael Bruntz, Mike Schaefer as well. And before we even get into it, because we got a lot to talk about when it comes to Husker football, Husker volleyball, and then how about Husker basketball? Yes, indeed. We want to thank Kros Strain as always. They do such a great job of hosting this event. This is our second time. Doug has been fantastic to work with, but big thank you to Bobby, to Scott, to Doug, to Jeff, and then Tammy is taking care of you tonight, so make sure you take care of Tammy over there at the bar as well. Big thank you to Kros Strain. We love being here. And don't forget, if you haven't had it already, the Cornhusker Crusher, the official craft beer of the Huskers. It is fantastic. Please have one or just have a beer because 'tis the season. But boys, first of all, Shafe, what are you drinking down there?
I asked for the inflatable snowman. I assume that's what this is. I didn't think it was going to be as red as it turned out to be.
Okay.
It's flavorful. I will say that for sure.
Hey, Doug, why is that so red? Is there a reason behind that? Cranberry.
Okay, there we go.
All right, there you go.
That's what Bruntz was smelling. He wondered if I was drinking Kool-Aid.
They've got some amazing West Coast and some hazies, also some seasonals, and then tomorrow, if you want to make this thing a twice a week thing, down here tomorrow is their big event, their 12 Jams of Christmas. Some of the most creative and delicious concoctions of craft beer made out of jam and different things. It's going on tomorrow right here at Kros Strain. It's an awesome event, so please do check that out, I should say. All right, so I swear this is like my...
This is your job.
Yeah. No, I'm saying this isn't like
it's
my
only
fifth
your
beer
first.
either. Yeah, this is only my first, exactly. All right, boys. So it's been a slow week.
It's quiet.
It's been kind of quiet. Dylan, we're going to start with Dylan. Now, going around the room, level of overall surprise that he is in the transfer portal. Grant.
Oh,
one.
This is not a level. This is not. I'm going to break. I'm just going to ignore that essentially and just say like it's surprising how. I mean, I care, but I feel ambivalent about the whole thing. And as I've thought about it, I think towards the tail end of this whole thing, there was a lot of conversation, especially over the last 2 months, of something that was unofficially coined as Raiola fatigue.
Yeah, that's
true. And I think almost everybody felt it to some extent. And it's to the point where I'm like, gosh, the sentiment today is one that I sort of agree with in that it might actually just be best for both parties to move on. That's what's floating out there right now. I think I'm like a 5. Like I'm not too terribly shocked. I wouldn't have been surprised if he stayed. And I'm not really that surprised that he left either.
BC?
Okay, I'll say 30% surprised.
Yeah.
That would be a 3.
We're going 1 to 10.
Yeah, 1 to 10.
I'm
but,
sorry.
I mean, if you want to put a percentage.
Well, I mean, I said I don't care.
Your own
So
3.2.
It's like when you want him just to name one thing.
Oh, 3.2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Good.
No, I mean, I wasn't surprised. I did over the last week and a half kind of talk myself into the fact, I don't know, maybe he's going to stick around. I actually thought like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was like pretty sure he was gone.
I almost wonder too how much of that, because I think there are some people that felt that too. I wonder how much of that was based off of the change in the calendar. And so we're so used to, based on where the calendar was before, maybe the Monday after the final game of the regular season, or for anybody who would transfer away from a conference championship team, they would announce that they're going into the portal the first 2 or 3 days after. And I wonder now if it's like, we don't really know where the sweet spot is now with the new portal being January 2nd to the 15th.
I think you're right, though, Grant. There was sort of a it is what it is reaction to it yesterday.
Yes.
I mean, you can't speak for everybody, but that I would say that was a general sentiment, and it was much different. And I think it just shows the climate of college football now. than Wandale Robinson when he went in
Yeah,
the portal.
that's a
Like,
that's a
I
wow.
mean, that was
And that feels like that was forever ago.
yeah, it does, but it wasn't that long ago. And when that happened, I remember there was the kind of that panic that set in, and like,
Yep.
how can this happen, sort of thing. And I think people are just sort of trained to it. It's not just because of sort of some of the struggles of Husker football. I think it's that combined with
Sure.
just our climate we're in.
Bruntz going better than a 3.2 on this one.
Uh, I- a 3 or 30% or whatever.
It's 1 to 10, I guess.
Okay, sorry.
screwed up.
I say a 3 is a fair grade. I think
Yeah.
for what BC laid out, you maybe entertained the chance that things would change, but I mean, I think things have kind of been heading that way for a little while. I mean, the CBS report that Nebraska was at least preparing for
Right.
that. I think that was pretty well sourced. It's it would have been one thing if it was at the end of last year, but it's kind of felt like you've kind of played the string out this year. He had some good games. Didn't really get to where you wanted to be, and it's I don't know. I think Grant's right. Like it's a little bit like the relationship is a little bit played out. And it's time for both parties to move on. And then I think too, I think Dayton decommitting. I mean, I think that was a pretty good tell that things were kind of trending that way. But um, it's a reset opportunity for Nebraska now of what do you want this offense to be? And I think that's a really big and important question that I guess we could probably get into at some point here.
Yeah.
But I don't think there was a ton of surprise that things ended there. It was the funny thing was you had this on Monday. It was like all of the college quarterbacks that you thought were probably going to be coveted quarterbacks in the portal this year were like, hey, we're announcing right now. It's
Right.
happening right now.
Yeah, it was a chain reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a ton of surprise, I don't think.
Schaefer, break it up. Tell me you were shocked.
I wasn't shocked. I would put it at a 5 because I was allowing for the possibility that both sides were ultimately going to find their way back to each other, and that Dylan wasn't going to have the opportunity that he wanted elsewhere. Nebraska wasn't necessarily going to have a quarterback in its pocket. I think they're a better version of themselves with Dylan than with TJ Lateef going into 2026. So I think that's something you'd have to look at. But um, for me, so much of it was. And so much of this transfer portal in the month of December is just pure tampering. I mean,
Yeah.
it when he went in, my first indication was he more than likely knows where he's going to go because he doesn't go into the portal if he doesn't have a spot lined up. So I anticipate that whether it's the report of Louisville today or whoever else, I just anticipate the groundwork from the Raiola camp had been done while he was still, listed on Nebraska's roster. So for me, and Bruntz kind of mentioned all these quarterbacks went in. I just have to assume that's what was going on the first, 10 days of December or so after the signing period. Was people just sort of figuring out this is what we want to do, this is what the numbers look like, this is where we want to go, and so on and so forth.
And I'm with all of you guys. I think that the shock value was very low. And Brunson, you brought up that CBS report before Black Friday, and I think a lot of us were thinking, is this anything new that we've heard before? Because with the Dayton Raiola decommitment, there was a lot of trying to connect the dots on that. I didn't necessarily buy into it as much based on what we were kind of hearing is that Dayton wants to do his own thing. And that's understandable. But I think we maybe were naive in believing, oh, this has nothing to do with what the other decision that ultimately and inevitably came is going to have any impact on that. But is there a world, Schaefer, that this team moving on from Dylan Raiola, putting their attention on TJ Lateef, obviously needing to support him in the quarterback room as well, is there a case to be made that this team can be better off without Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Nebraska football was beholden to only having success if Dylan Raiola was involved. Now, obviously, their last two bowl appearances, their last however many wins, minus the UCLA game, he's been the quarterback for, and so they eventually someone else is going to have to be able to do that for him. What interests me more than whether it's TJ Lateef or somebody in the portal is does Nebraska have a clear picture for who they want to be in 2026? Are they going to actually outline an offense that decides or knows how it's going to attack teams and what they want to do? Because there was so much discussion about TJ Latif's legs and how valuable those would be in this whole picture. And then the Penn State and Iowa game happened, and he was barely involved as a runner, or was hindered a little bit in that. And if Nebraska wants to move into the dual threat quarterback lifestyle, are they prepared to have a backup quarterback at a moment's notice? Because the Big Ten generally doesn't allow quarterbacks to make it through the full season,
Especially
if they
Lincoln.
choose to
Well,
run. I mean,
yeah,
even the ones that are successful.
even if they're pocket passers, though. I mean,
I mean, yeah.
Nebraska's had their fair share
Tanner
of
Lee,
issues with
folks.
that.
Tanner Lee, last guy to make it
Well,
all the way
I mean,
through.
Dylan started
Dylan
every game.
did.
Oh,
Yeah,
before
yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah.
That's
But
right.
before that,
So it's just a situation where I'm fascinated by what this offense is going to be. I'm fascinated that Dana Holgerson's still the offensive coordinator today. Like, all of this, if you want a number that's a surprise to me, that's like an 8 or a 9.
Okay, let me ask you: is it because of the events, losing the quarterback, or because he's being sought out to be a head coach?
To me, it'd be more just what we watched for 12 games. Like, what was that? I genuinely, for as much time as we spent on Dana Holgerson and this offense, and as much money as Nebraska invested in that offense, it didn't feel like they moved forward as a program on that side of the ball very much. I mean, I know statistically some things look better, but I think if you just only went off the 10 games against Power 5 opponents, Nebraska or Power 4 opponents, Nebraska's offense looked pretty similar to how it had in 24. And so, um, I just think that's the big question for this program. And I know they went out and they got a different defensive coordinator, and they're changing out pieces on the coaching staff. But I'm as fascinated by what Dana Holgerson has in store for us for 2026 as I am anything else with Nebraska football, because I thought last year was a failure on his end.
BC, where did things go wrong? And specifically, I want to ask, at what point did the Nebraska fan base sour fully on Dylan, to the point where by the time we get to today, it's don't let the door hit you on the way out, in a lot of ways. Is it, because I think you felt it a little bit, maybe even before the Minnesota game, where there were some rumblings and some people that were frustrated with Dylan, but it didn't really become mainstream frustration until maybe even post-injury, until the point where we are today, where people are just tired of it.
Yeah, I don't know that people soured fully on him. I think there's a lot of mixed reactions to him. I do think and it's not necessarily his fault, there's Dylan fatigue, because he showed up at a Friday Night Lights camp when he was 15 years old and threw like a 50-yard rope, and everybody was taking video of it, and it was on from there on. So this has been a player who has been in the imaginations of Nebraska fans as like what that could look like, since before he probably had his driver's license. And so over time, if you don't get to that point as a program with your number one QB where you win like 9+ games in the first couple of years, there's sort of there is going to be that natural reaction of like, what's behind door number 3? Bruntz texted me that line the other day. Door number 3.
You always go to door number 3.
Sorry if he was going to say that.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But it's like the mystery sucker. I'll go a different one. Like those. Like, remember the purple sucker you would always get with the question mark?
Oh,
You
yeah.
want to see?
Yeah,
which
it was
one-
always root beer. It
Yeah.
sucked.
Dum-dum.
Yeah,
It's a
the
dum-dum.
dum-dums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think because the program, not all his fault, and Dana brought it up today. I mean, it's such a strange thing, the margin for errors. Like the USC game, you're up 14-6. You're on the 23-yard line.
Run the ball,
You-
Dana.
you
just run the ball,
Well,
Dana.
I think they were
But he
gonna run-
did.
Don't check
Yeah,
out
He
of
did.
it.
He checked
And
out of
Dylan
it.
checked
Yeah.
out of
Yeah,
it.
he did.
Yeah,
That's
Dylan
true.
checked out of it. and
Which is
that's
the
it.
other thing that I think it'll be interesting. No matter how long this coaching staff and this regime exists in Nebraska, it seems like a relative honesty to a fault will be one of the coaching staff's characteristics, to the point where they will tell you specifically on what play, what things went wrong.
Mhm.
So I wonder too if you almost did they give him too much freedom? Like we talked a little bit before this season about nightmare scenarios, and to me, the nightmare scenario for Nebraska was Dylan Raiola doesn't take that next step. And for a while, it looked like he had. I mean, there were points in the first half of the season against some lesser competition where it felt like he moved forward. But at the same time, when you look at the full body of work of the whole season, it doesn't feel like he took a very big jump from freshman to sophomore year.
I thought he got better, but it's that fine line. If you win that USC game, you're 8-2. You know, who knows what sort of momentum you have down the stretch. That doesn't really explain what we'll get to the defense at some point. What happened with the train wreck the last 2 games there. But it certainly was like one of those moments in Husker football that will be a what if. Like, what was the chain reaction or the ripple effect of that injury and that specific play when the night and the season was sort of tilting in a positive direction at that very moment. And so I do think, though, back to your question, Grant, it's a product of a name that has been in Nebraska fans' brain or on their phones or screens for 4 or 5 years. You know, it's not just the 2 years he's played here. And so, and there's also been like a month long of going back to the CBS Sports story about what might happen. And so I think some people had kind of trained themselves like, I expect he's going to go in the portal. So I just don't think there was a shock when it happened.
Bruntz, the thing that I find interesting about this entire conversation, and Schaefer kind of piqued my interest about the Dana Holgorsen part of this too, is moving on from Dylan Raiola. Let's just assume that it's going to be catered around TJ Lateef. We'll see what they do come January 2nd in the transfer portal when that opens. And Dana said it, 3 times today?
No,
that it's going to be,
that's why I don't
crazy.
But the thing that he said today that makes me think they're not going to build around Lateef is he said best available.
Best available.
He was asked, what type of quarterback, what are you looking for? And he just said best available. I mean, that to me does not say that Nebraska's main plan is let's build around TJ Lateef for the future. I mean, I think they're looking to get a dude out. But whether or not they have enough money to do that, that's another question.
And until we know who that guy is, we got to assume, okay, right now it's TJ Lateef, and we'll see what happens there. But Bruntz, if there is something to be said about what happens with Dana Holgorsen, from what like Schaefer brought up, the 12 games that you saw, and you're like, it just does not look like that wide open offense. It was even asked today, hey, are you going to finally open it up in the bowl game? Is it TJ Lateef led offense, or at least a quarterback that has a similar skill set? Does that allow Dana Holgorsen to be more of the Dana Holgorsen we thought he would be with this offense?
I don't know what that looks like. Like when Dana Holgorsen came here, I think everybody had like images of air raid dancing in their heads, right? Like you wanted mesh, you wanted receivers,
Mike Leach.
Yeah, like that's just not where he's at now. And I think if you kind of saw later on at Houston and at times at West Virginia, I think he was kind of getting away from that. But I didn't leave today thinking like TJ Lateef is their guy.
No.
It's a small sample size that you have to go off of, and I mean, not a great sample size. I mean, he was good against UCLA, which that was essentially a home game. And I thought they had a good game plan for that, but you look at Iowa, where he was injured. You look at Penn State, where they were just completely overmatched. I mean, there was a lot going on there that just, I don't know that we can take too much from the last month and just assume that it's going to carry forward. Like, I think Nebraska is going to go into the portal this year looking for somebody that can beat out TJ Lateef for that starting job. I mean, I think TJ Lateef is going to have to compete for that starting job for sure.
Yeah.
And, I think, the big question, and I think Schaefer is right in this way, like, Nebraska needs to figure out what they're going to be offensively this offseason. Because what they've shown the last 2 years, they've taken steps in the right direction, but it's not enough. And I think that kind of push and pull and the deep soul searching that comes with that is going to be probably as it should be as much of a storyline in the offseason as much as whatever the defense is going to look like with a new coordinator and a couple new staffers on that side of the ball. So I don't think it's probably safe to assume that it's TJ Lateef's offense by any means, regardless of how this bowl game goes.
Schaefer, where would you rate your confidence in Matt Rule at this point in time, given everything that's gone on with the coaching hires? Yes, he's been quick to fire and he's made the right decisions to fire, but he's airballed several of the hires that he's made to this point in time, and he's got one or two, I guess, if you count special teams and Mike Eckler. He's got 2 A hires at coordinator, but he's got well, jury's still out on Dana Holgerson and a lot of question marks and or negatives with the other coaching staff hires he's made.
Yeah, it's tough because I think you have the coaching piece of it where they've kind of cycled through several different people now. You have the player procurement part of it where they just finished with a number 113 class in the country. He's cycled through recruiting personnel staffers. He's cycled through, all sorts of people over there. It's like he's trying to find answers. But Nebraska has signed over 80 some players. And when I looked at the Iowa depth chart today, when I was looking at this, because I wondered, only 7 of their high school signees were starters, roughly 7. There's injuries in there, but, so you go to the transfer portal. Nobody they brought in from the portal for this staff has been drafted or has been an all conference player. Um, I just I find myself going into to this offseason and 2026, like, what are they building off of?
Mhm.
Who are they? You can talk about culture until you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
And there's things that this program does really well right now that previous programs were not able to do. But you look at it and it's like you can't keep talking about the fact that you're one of the youngest teams in the Big Ten because at some
Right.
point those players have to be able to produce for you.
Yeah.
We can't talk about it as a reset in year 4 because you didn't sign an extension for a reset. You signed because of stability.
Yeah.
So I don't know what my confidence is. I'm not over here thinking that he should be on the hot seat or anything like that, but it's one of these where at some point all of these changes have to lead to something.
Well,
And part of Dylan going out the door for me is you invested heavily around this, and now that's gone. And what do you have? You have a running back going to the NFL. You have a quarterback that's no longer in the system. You have a backup quarterback that your head coach, or excuse me, offensive head coach, if you would, just said best available. So you don't even know if you have that on your roster. Your backup running back was a wide receiver recruit for you. We'll see what he looks like against Utah. Your offensive line is comprised of guys that are either on their way out or you don't know what you've recruited in recent years, and you're going to get a different offensive line coach. But there are way more questions about Nebraska football going into year 4 than what I would expect for someone that was a program builder and all of this. And that's not to say that it's going to have to go bad. It's just what they have attempted to do so far has led for them being a 500 football team largely. And I don't know, can you just keep cycling through different coaches to magically get the answer everywhere? That's what I think we're going to find out. And the schedule on paper looks to be much, much more difficult for Nebraska in
Yeah.
2026. And you don't even know who your best players are at this point. And the hard thing is we haven't even gotten to the point where people are going to be going into the portal from your roster.
Mhm. Yeah.
so my question too is, and I feel like this is pretty similar, and kind of leads into some of the things we'll discuss later. I feel like this is Fred Hoiberg 2022, except with, I guess, an above 500 record. I mean, it hasn't been the disaster of the
Rule's
first
son
3
is
years
about
of.
to
Yeah.
walk on
Yeah.
and then
I
eventually
don't know.
become a
Maybe.
piece down the line.
But
What would he play? He looks like
he's not big enough. He's not big enough.
We
to-
think he could
yeah,
be like a
kicker.
Fullback?
Full
Holder?
long
long
snapper.
snapper.
Long snapper.
Okay.
I'd land on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look, in 2022, Fred Hoiberg fires Matt Abdelmassih and builds with the proper assistant coaching hires what we've seen today. I mean, it seems like it's a similar inflection point right now for this program. I mean, how often do you get a chance to hire this many different guys and fire this many different guys on your coaching staff before management and others decide to pull the plug?
Well, it's also Pat Stewart season. We're about to
Yeah.
see. I mean,
That's a good point.
that's where we're at here. I mean, they say they got the money pot with the rev share and the overflow to be competitive after some guys. You should have a 3 million plus a
Right.
bit of money here from
I know.
Raiola
Yep.
that's opened up. And so there's all sorts of interesting things like how do you use that? Like do you use it all toward one quarterback that's like that big name guy? Or do you money ball it a little bit and just have TJ and some guys a little cheaper compete and you're spending some of that money on the trenches? So, I mean, that's the part. January is going to be fascinating in that way. Right now, it's kind of bleak. That's everything that's been laid out is accurate. I mean, the last 2 games brought that feeling, and there's nothing really that can be said at a press conference or anything that changes anybody's opinion on that. It's what you get done in the portal here in this next month and who you bring in, and if they're the type of guys like, Texas Tech flipped their program pretty fast. They have obviously a lot of money, but you're looking for those sort of difference makers. And I honestly think it's going to start like in the trenches. As much as
I
we're going to
agree.
talk about the QB, it's
Has
like,
to.
can you find those dudes that just change things on the O line and D line in a way where you line up in October, November, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it feels like Nebraska can flex on people again, because this year it certainly was the opposite.
Yeah, and Bruntz, I want to get your thoughts on this because what you just said there, as far as in the trenches, is a area that I do hope Matt Rule, especially the last two games, you look at, you try to spread that out, and you try to build from within, work your way out. And what I mean by that, you're investing in the O line, D line. You have that type of physicality up front, because the one thing that we saw, and I'm going to use the example of Iowa. Iowa's skilled players at best above average, slightly above average, but their defensive line and their offensive line most years are A plus. And they are the type of team with that physicality up front that can pull off that upset, because they can outmuscle you. If they can get you into that rock fight, they can beat you. Nebraska has not had that luxury for a very long time. Now, when they had Nash and Ty, you had one of the areas solved, but you didn't have the offensive line. If you can start from within, work your way out, not spend so much time on, hey, we need that game changer on the outside. We need that quarterback that's going to be able to throw for 400 yards a game. Get the damn offensive line and defensive line on the same season figured out, and I think you'd be surprised on the success you can have.
Well, I mean, you have to build the lines. I mean, like, Ty Robinson, by the time he left and was dominating, I mean, he's a 6-year player.
That's a good point.
Um,
And he developed. He was one of the
develops.
develops.
I mean, he wasn't Ty Robinson in year 3.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure that out. Like, you've got to find a way now to kind of have the stopgap guys out of the portal, and you've got to build behind them. I mean, the problem for Nebraska is they didn't sign a defensive lineman in this recruiting class. They had a couple from last year that they feel like can get in there, but I mean that you've got to figure out things along the line, and I think that's why why you probably have Jeep Wade coaching offensive line right now. Like, it's a group that you kind of played out the string with the guys that you had that have been veterans for a long time, the Corcorans, the Lutovskis, those types of guys. But you have to be able to build your own, because it's a really dangerous way to live when you have to go into the portal every year to try to find linemen. It's an expensive endeavor to go into the portal to try to find defensive and offensive linemen. And that you have to develop them. You have to find guys that you can bring in, multi-year transfers, even if you're going to go that route,
Right.
that can come in year 1 and then develop into year 2. So I agree. I mean, I think the conversation about Nebraska's offense and their struggles this year, a large part of it was up front. I mean, you could not pass protect consistently enough, I think, to be the kind of offense that Nebraska wanted to be. They found some things in the run game, but you have to be able to, it's a man's game. And we saw against Penn State, we saw against Iowa, and Nebraska just got flat pushed around. I mean, there's really no way dancing around that.
Yeah, the best way that I want to describe this, Grant and I were talking about this after the Iowa game. We were doing our reaction show on Boomer Radio, and I remember saying at one point, I want to get to where I don't need Matt Rule or Dana Holgerson or whoever the DC, obviously John Butler at the time, to explain how this defensive lineman has gotten better throughout the year, or this offensive lineman has gotten better throughout the year. I want to see it with my eyes. Now is the time to where we don't need that explained to us, where we're watching games on Saturday like, yeah, they've gotten better. Look at them.
Well, and the specific comment that was in line 2, which I found to be, immensely disturbing, was post-game after the Iowa game, Matt Rule said Riley Van Poppel played really well.
Didn't see it.
And I'm like, where is that like clear evidence of a step forward? I think you'd see some of it on the offensive line with what Emma Johnson was able to produce, but at the same time, it's still not good enough, obviously. And the defensive line just got frankly pushed around all year long.
I think to kind of jump in and double down on Bruntz's point, the transfer portal is a bit fool's gold when it comes to the line, though, because Nebraska and these guys can back this up. Nebraska went hard into the portal last year to go get offensive tackles. Bruntz, how many of those tackles that we covered had good seasons?
Well, I mean,
I mean, guys got paid. Shiaz Pete
Mhm.
got paid.
Isaiah World.
The Isaiah World out at Oregon got paid. You go ask any of those fan bases if they were happy with their offensive
Right.
production. None of them were. I mean, Oregon was happy with their season, but it wasn't because Isaiah World was the $2 million player that he was supposed to be. And so the critical thing for Nebraska, regardless of how anything else goes forward, is they have to be able to develop internally on both sides of the ball on the line. And so whether that's finding, they moved on from Terry Braden really quickly because I think they determined that none of their defensive linemen were better
Mhm.
at the end of year 2 for Keona Davis and year 3 for Riley Van Poppel and those guys than where they were at the beginning. And so because of that, like those are the people that you need to be better. Those are the people that hold the key to Nebraska's 2026 season. And up front, offensively, like, yeah, they're going to go into the portal and try to find linemen. So is everybody else in the country.
Mhm.
So, you can't just think that your bag of money is going to solve this. Like you need Grant Bricks to be the player that you thought he was when you recruited him.
Yep.
You need Gunnar Gatula to take a step. Claude Mpuma is maybe the most important recruit Nebraska's pulled in a long time. He's not the 5-star in their class, but he's one of the true offensive tackles I can think of that Nebraska's recruited since like David Neville. Like they don't get a lot of guys that are legitimate cornerstone tackles in this
Yeah.
program. You get a lot of guys who are 6'5" that can play guard or can play tackle, and most programs would rather have them at guard. And at Nebraska, they're Nick Gates and they're Brendan Hymus and they're Matt Farniok and they're Grant Bricks and they're Gunnar Gatula, and they have to play tackle. They have to play out of position. So Nebraska, internally, if they can develop on the lines there, that allows everything else to kind of come into place. I mean, that's your successful teams aren't necessarily pulling linemen out of the portal. They're doing it and they're building it internally. And that's where Jeep Wade is, hopefully you can bring there's a Georgia Tech lineman that just went into the portal. Hopefully you can bring some of those guys along, but if you can't, you're hoping he can develop them internally.
Yeah, I think I'm coming at this, and well, I think you and I both are really from a much more negative slant than when we were here.
I sound
in
like I think
October.
everything's
God,
terrible,
man.
But
it's not.
But
It's
I do feel that way in a lot of
Burn it down.
ways.
They are playing in a bowl
Sorry,
game, damn
everyone.
it.
Why even play the game?
So I think one of the things I saw Bruce Feldman tweeted
Should
this
they be?
out, and he if you think back to that 2023 Elite 11 quarterback class, which is that Elite 11 camp is a great June story for people looking for things to do to put on their sites anywhere. But Nebraska had 2 quarterbacks in that class, Danny Kalin and Dylan Raiola. Both of them are no longer with Nebraska. 13 of the 20 quarterbacks invited to that exclusive elite camp are not with the teams they signed with or are currently in the portal. And then on the other side, you have a guy who is a 2-star in Fernando Mendoza who just won the Heisman. And to me, it came back to, I think, traits are important, but coaching goes a very, very long way. And in a world in which coaches necessarily have never been totally dependable in college football, we've seen that. We saw it with Lane Kiffin this year. But they might be more dependable and more consistent in terms of actually staying at your school still than players with the way that the current setup is. And you have to be able to elevate the players that are on your roster. And through 3 years of Matt Rule, and Indiana maybe is an unfair standard, I think that's sort of the extreme of this. But I don't know if Nebraska really has truly elevated the players on its roster to the degree you need to be able to be even in that second tier of Big Ten teams with Iowa and Washington and Illinois.
Yeah. Well, they haven't developed in the trenches well enough. I mean, this year when there were the O-line injuries sort of in the middle of the season, that's where I'm kind of hoping like we're hearing about like Grant Bricks it's
Right.
his
I
time.
was constantly waiting
Like,
to hear his name.
yeah, like
I'm
it
with
was
you.
always they were still all on the fringe.
And we're not
And
slotting
and-
6-year Turner
So-
Corcoran in there.
again, that's
Right.
why Jeep Wade is here. That's why Lonnie Teasley is here. I mean, it's their time. They've got to take a big step. This has to be like spring ball light that's going on over there right now. They've got to get old and stay old. They can't ever go into a season again like they did with the defensive line this year,
Yeah.
where we all knew we talked through it for 8 months before this season. Like it's a question mark, and you try to squint and make it seem like it's going to work, but when you're looking out on the field, even at Arrowhead, that night and you're watching Sorsby kind of rip down the field on that one possession in the fourth quarter, you're like, oh boy, this is going to be dicey.
Yeah.
And it was a hold on to your butts feel the whole season there. And so yeah, they got some guys that you don't by no means are going to give up on. A lot of people would love to have Williams with Neri. I mean,
Yes.
that guy's a freak
Yes.
when he's standing up at the podium. Cade Petchak, we think is going to be a really good player.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's got to be a big step from those guys next year. And then I didn't want to seem like it's all about the portal. You need to supplement well. Like you gotta hit a high percentage on those guys you do spend your money on then and have it fit together.
And with that too, because I assume this is also going to be a focal point in the transfer portal too. But the type of year that Emmett Johnson had, guys, I was ready, and maybe we're still not completely ready to fully embrace and say, okay, EJ Barthel is the guy. I was ready to be done with that. I was, because they could not figure out a running back rotation. But then Emmett, they identify he puts on the type of weight he needed to. He just looked like a different guy. The type of year that they showcased him in, I'm curious what that does for Nebraska looking for a running back. I know some of this can all be on how Emmett is in the Senior Bowl combines and how he fares, but you're going to be making decisions well before any of that stuff is finalized as far as Emmett's future in the NFL. What did Emmett, and maybe more importantly, Nebraska in the offense and EJ Barthel do to maybe making that position more attractive, not only in the transfer portal, but also in the high school recruiting ranks as well?
Well, I think this is all apologies to the Emmett Johnson Heisman campaign.
How dare you?
But I think that was very forward looking as well. Like it was, how do we show to potential running backs in the future that we're going to showcase a back? And I think that was kind of the strategic thinking there.
It's a good point.
I think you have to give a lot of credit also to Dana Holgerson for seeing something in Emmett Johnson when he showed up. I mean, you look at the splits of pre-Dana, post-Dana, it's a much different picture there. And Nebraska's probably going to have to add somebody in the portal. I mean, I think, it's a more attractive place now than maybe what it was previously. I think Nebraska's better funded to add a back that's more of the bell cow that everybody wants. But I do think though Nebraska kind of was pushing Emmett Johnson forward after a great year. I mean, best year since Divino Zigbo. Like, is that?
I mean, probably best year since
Best year since
2014.
2014, yeah.
The batteries,
The battery year. Yeah.
battery year.
Should've brought him.
I was bringing that up with him when we were talking about the Johnson Heisman campaign, what they did for Amir. I didn't even remember what they had actually done that
The
year.
double
The
A's.
battery, yeah, those were
Yep.
powering a remote in my house for at least a couple of years, so it got the job done. But no, they're going to have to go that route, and I think when you can show potential running backs that you can feature somebody and they can have success, and also, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Emmett Johnson was not a NFL type guy at the start of this year, and they, for a variety of reasons, have shown that he could potentially be that.
Did you guys see? I bring up EJ Barthel because I don't know how you guys felt about him leading up to this season, but I think it's appropriate to give him some credit. But is it all on? Is it EJ Barthel? You mentioned Dana Holgerson. How much credit does EJ Barthel get for this?
I think in the sense that he's a position coach and Emmett had a big year, it certainly deserves, credit for being his position coach for 3 years. He's helped Emmett along in that regard. I think for me, the question with EJ is you've been here for 3 years now that you no longer have Emmett Johnson, who,
Right.
had to kind of force the issue himself 2 years in a row. Like, let's not get it twisted. Nebraska didn't prioritize Emmett Johnson until 2025. Emmett kind of had to force his way from the back of the pack in 23. He did it again in 24. And then in 25, he really exploded. And Dana Holgerson did a nice job, featuring him. I think the big question for EJ is, okay, like, what does this room look like now moving forward? Isaiah Mosey is I don't know how these guys feel, but I think he's the most interesting player in that bowl game for Nebraska against a Utah defense that isn't necessarily great against the run, a Nebraska team that probably isn't just going to have TJ Latif drop back 40 times and throw. And so, we'll see what Mosey kind of looks like, and if maybe he can sort of announce himself as a candidate in that job for 2026. So I think it's definitely something they'll have to go into the portal and try to find. Um, Jamal Rule seems like he'd be an interesting option, but as a freshman, it's hard to rely on that. I don't know what they expect to get out of Connor Booth. I think the ship has sailed on Quentin Ives. I don't know if these guys will be comfortable sort of saying that. Matt Rule tried to make it a thing, kind of like Fetch, but it didn't
Never
ever
caught
catch on, much like Fetch didn't either. So I think running back with EJ, it's going to be, does he have connections that he can help bring somebody in? I mean, this is part of the aspect of being a college coach is the recruiting, and part of where Nebraska's hires for Matt Rule haven't worked out as well has been in terms of player procurement, and it's a big offseason in that regard.
I think you have to give him credit though. I mean, Trey Taylor.
Yeah, and he's been
And
helpful. Claude Puma is a big
Claude
part
Puma,
of that
yeah.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not just but at running back, how much different would this picture look if they had finished with Gowan Lacey a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Who's now one of
Right.
the best running backs in the country as well. So it's not that he can't. It's just that they haven't quite been able to land those guys that they've really wanted out of high school.
If you're Nebraska, back to the quarterback discussion for a second. If you're Nebraska, when you're looking at some of these top tier guys, guys that could maybe take over for a year and get you over to whatever the future might hold, Sam Levitz and Aiden Childs and the like. What do you sell a quarterback like that for Nebraska? Because look, you don't necessarily know what the offensive line picture looks like. You don't necessarily know what it looks like at running back. Receiver, you have a halfway decent feel. But what do you try to sell? Is it facilities? Is it the fan base? Is it just money?
Money's a good way to start. Yeah,
Start with the money.
that goes a long way.
Yeah. That'll get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
I think. I mean,
Especially if there's a dollar sign on the bag. Like I think that helps too. So, sorry.
I do
Like the old bank robbers.
Yeah.
Recruiting.
I do think
Attaboy, Bruntz.
you can there is still a selling point to you're like this is like the pro team here. I do think there is part of that. Like you can be a rock star with the NIL situation that is going to be available to you and all that. But you do have to paint a picture of your vision for the offense, as we've kind of talked about. What does that exactly look like in next year? You got to kind of fast forward that, and also these are the type of players. That there's some good wide receivers coming back, but you also probably are pointing them towards some guys who are going after in the portal at the same time as them, maybe. And then you probably are trying to sell them on the idea, hey, even though we're a little skeptical of it, the O-line, we've got a new coach here. We've got a bunch of guys who are now in their third or fourth years, on the O-line. This is their time to take a step. We feel like we're poised to make that leap. And so a lot of times a competitor or a guy who's on the outside looking in at a program will hear that stuff, see that, and be like, oh, I believe in myself, and you combine me with that, I think I can make this thing take off. That you never undersell the power of like the ego too of the players involved, that they can be that guy to change it. I mean, every recruiting class we've ever talked to has been like, we're gonna be the group that wins the
We're going to get on the
championship,
ground
right?
floor
Yeah.
being
Like,
the ones that change things.
So I mean, so there's
Blasting off.
and that's useful to you.
You guys want me to read the poem from Dylan Raiola? I
Yeah,
will.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's useful to you as a coaching staff. You say, hey, you got the facilities, you've got the talent. Well, why can't we make this happen?
Yeah. Guys, we're going to talk more football in hour number 2. And just
Or
for
Nebraska basketball.
Yes, because for anybody who's shown up, we are going to do our first shot of giveaways from Kros Strain here coming up at 6 o'clock. We're going to also be talking a lot of Nebraska volleyball with Lincoln Arneal. He is the authority when it comes to coverage of college volleyball. He's in the house. He's going to be talking to us as well in hour 2. We thought we were going to be talking about a Final Four. Unfortunately,
It's nothing new.
we're not doing that. But we've got to talk about hoops, because I will say Monday was the first time I think in my entire 46 years of being on this beautiful earth. Yeah, I know. I just aged myself.
Really?
That I was
My surprise of you being 46. 10 out of 10.
Wow. Yeah.
You thought I was older, didn't you?
Yeah, 62 at least.
That I have ever been this interested.
With that jawline, though?
Thank
Yeah.
you. That I was ever this interested in seeing the AP poll as it involved Nebraska this early in a season ever. And we were rewarded with what we saw yesterday. Number 15, 11-0. The victory over Illinois was phenomenal because when Illinois ties it up, you're like, all right, that was cool. That was fun. But Jamarcus Lawrence calls game, and all of a sudden, we've got a little bit, I think, more than kind of a cool story or cool start to Husker hoops right now.
Hello, Schaefer.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been phenomenal. BC and I were talking about this going into the season, and I was excited. I thought that they had an opportunity to be as good, if not slightly better, than 2 years ago, which felt like maybe a stretch given that it didn't seem like they had this massive offseason, but so much of it is rink masked. I mean, I think as the further we get into this year and what we remember from 2 years ago, he's such a special player. The way he opens up the entire offensive floor for Nebraska. I mean, you saw against Illinois. Just sitting at home watching that game, you could see Illinois was so worried about Nebraska's ability to shoot it with what Sanford did early that it opened up every guard for a backdoor cut to just a clear path, like just a clear path to the hoop. And you don't get that if you don't have Rink Mast who's capable of standing 25 feet away from the hoop, drawing the defender out there, and can also pop it from there. And that guy is making like 30-foot three-pointers in every game right now, just showing off with it. And then it's infectious. It feels like everybody on the court who's out there. I mean, Jared Garcia has played huge minutes the last 2 games. And just kind of he's out there and he's the one that gets the tip in. You know, we don't talk about that. We talk about the Lawrence three, but he had the free throws, he had the tip in. He gave them big minutes. You're getting great minutes from Cale Jacobson when he comes in. You're getting big shots from Jamarcus Lawrence, who looks so comfortable relative to maybe kind of where he was at the beginning of his career before he left to go to Rhode Island. And then, Sam Hoiberg is the best version of himself that we've seen. He's always been aggressive, was willing to stand in front of any Maryland defender barreling through the lane as a freshman to take a charge. But now we're seeing a guy who's able to go into the lane, can get baskets, can go up and under, can shoot the big three. They're so much fun to watch. And it looks so much like a team that Fred Hoiberg had at Iowa State.
Yes, totally agree.
And we knew from 2 years ago that Rink Mast was the linchpin for that team. I mean, Casey was the emotional heartbeat, but it was so much of what Rink Mast could do that made everything else work around it that you now have him back after a year away, and you can just see, like, they look like they're having a blast. It is the most fun team to watch for Nebraska basketball. Obviously, the wins help, but they look fearless. I mean, they had every reason to just go away after halftime, blowing a 13-point lead, feeling like the circumstances were against them. And they came right back out in the second half and started swinging again. And it wasn't Peyton Sanford. It was Jamarcus Lawrence on the dribble drive. It was Jamarcus Lawrence with a layup. It was Sam Hoiberg with a big three. I mean, it is a ton of fun to watch a team where it feels like everybody who steps on the court is for the team on the front, but is also well aware of what their role is in every situation and unafraid to step up when it's their time to do so.
Yeah.
Nebraska 10-11 in its last 21 games against ranked opponents. I think that was one of the things that maybe surprised me the most, that has flown under the radar for these last 3 years. And somehow, and I think it'll change here, but Nebraska basketball might be the most underrated or under the radar story going. And certainly right now, unfortunately for them, they got buried by a couple of travesty sort of stories on Sunday and then today on Monday. So
other than Andy Katz.
Yeah,
but he loves himself some Fred Hoiberg, so it's okay.
Price Sanford just completely takes over that first half on the road to Illinois. BC, what did Nebraska see in him that Iowa's coaching staff couldn't?
I think Fred Hoiberg knew all along, because he recruited him throughout his high school career, that he was more than what some people pigeonholed him as. It's just like, he's a behind the arc guy. He sits out there. He's an all around player. He's got game to take it to the hoop. He's been better than I thought defensively. Just all areas. He's an all around player. And I was thinking about it, when in Nick Handley's lifetime would you have
the metric?
in his 72 years of living, have you been like,
got older?
They're 11,
Oh, he looks great.
yeah,
Look at that.
they're 11 games into the season, and they have 5 games of those 11 that are like pretty fascinating games.
Yeah.
Like the Oklahoma game in Sioux Falls
Yep.
was
It's like number
just
4 now.
it was dynamite.
And
It
they
was
were
like
down
one,
15 at one point, right? I mean,
yeah,
roughly, yeah.
yeah, they were one of the best sporting events I've been to in a while. Like just how
How
that
awesome
gym
is that
was.
arena,
Yeah,
by the way?
it's incredible. And then Kansas State was when I was like, okay, these guys might be a little different because K-State had that surge in the second half. Remember, they're hitting some threes and they go up by like 6 or 7, and there's about 8 to 10 minutes left. And Nebraska did not panic. That's also when the Sam Hoiberg is going to have 3 or 4 drives a game to the hoop theme started to really pick up steam because he was so huge, like having an answer for K-State in that one. So that's 2 of the 5, and then this last week you get 3 of them where you blow out your rival by 21, Wisconsin by 30, and then you give up a 13-0 run at the end of the half with 4 of your starters on the bench, and it's just like you talk about resetting and recalibrating, and whatever happened is behind us. That's what they did in that second half. Never trailed again. So I just think they've got an impressive maturity about them that some people talk about in the offseason and hoping they have, but so far they've really exhibited it.
I think there were a couple of instances where I felt like I could tell this team was different. The first being handling being the favorite against Creighton at home, and then not only covering, I guess, the 5.5 and meeting expectations, but surpassing them. And then the other situation, and I don't know if many people will bring this up as much, but you had 2 different instances. Once in the first half against Wisconsin, and then kind of really throughout the entire game against Illinois, where the officiating was subpar at best, and definitely working against Nebraska. And how often have we got to the end of a game or a session where that's a main topic or a discussion point? But in the Wisconsin game, you have a situation where Fred Hoiberg almost blows his top and gets a technical because of a poor stretch of officiating in the first half, and nobody even talks about it by the end because they won by 30, because they're a team that's actually good enough to overcome poor situations and poor circumstances. To me, that was one of the first times and second time that I could tell that there was something different about this group. What strikes you as different, Bruntz?
No, I mean, I think it's a group that I think both of these guys hit on, where it's like everybody is just maximizing the role that they're in. Like everybody understands what they're doing. It's was very obvious in that Creighton game where Creighton's like shuffling guys in and out. They're trying to find something in the rotation. Like they were searching for something. And for Nebraska, you have Price Sanford understands very much what he's supposed to do. You have Rink Mast, who I think has a very good command of like, okay, I need to do something offensively here. I'm gonna assert myself a little bit more. Jared Garcia coming in against Wisconsin, against Illinois, and probably the big 26 combined minutes in those 2 games, and they were huge. It just feels like a team that's very already dialed in and very mature. I mean, even I was kind of struck by the wins over Creighton, wins over Wisconsin. It was like, well, not to Belichick it, but you're kind of on to the next game. And I think I think the challenge sometimes with Nebraska basketball is you have to fight this urge to like, okay, we're this, like the wave just like rolls behind you. And this team, I think it's a credit to the maturity, is very good about just saying like, okay, we're Illinois next, or we're on to North Dakota or New Hampshire or whoever. Like I think that's the mark of a very mature team.
You mentioned it. We're going to get to our first break here in just a moment, but you mentioned Garcia. If you would have told me between Garcia and the role that I shouldn't even say a role. I mean, he's a bona fide starter now with Sam Hoiberg. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season that he would be a starter, I would have thought that was out of necessity because of injuries, but his role, and he's established himself, but also because we can all agree, Rink Mast, that was a huge addition, even though he'd always been with the program. Coming back was going to be huge. But Jamarcus Lawrence, I didn't know what to make of that. Coming back to Nebraska, that has been huge for this team. That has been massive for this team.
I was so excited when he came back because if you go back to that year that they made the tournament, I mean, he had some moments in that year where he stepped up big. They had that game against Iowa. Even I think it's the year with Sam Friesel and Derek Walker. I mean, he had some big threes down the stretch there. He's just a guy that has always kind of fit Nebraska basketball a little bit. I think he's asked to play out of position because they didn't have a point guard. And he wasn't at the point in his career where he could sort of handle that. I wonder if he felt like he wasn't part of the core that Nebraska kind of locked up with Gary and Williams and Mass going into last year, and that's why he left, and then realized like I had a pretty good thing here. And you can just kind of hear the maturity. I don't know if anybody saw it. They have their cinematic recap. He hits that big shot and he comes in and he has just kind of a quiet, understated way of telling these guys like that was great, but there's more. Like we want more. Like this isn't. We're not done. Yeah, we beat Illinois, but we're not like there's more out there. And so I didn't think he was making that shot. I'm glad that he did.
I thought when it left his
highly
hand, I
doubt
thought it
that
was
the
good.
plan.
I thought it was good as soon as it left his
Really?
hand. Oh, yeah. Oh
man.
my God, he did it.
I don't have 67 years on this earth like you do.
My eyes have played tricks on me many times.
In the time that I've been here, you just don't expect Nebraska to make shots in those situations.
That's
how they did it back in the days of Naismith.
I mean, when Chuck Juro was out there laying
in the old peach bucket.
Yeah.
I think when Lawrence is out there too, you can just feel there's a different energy to Nebraska's offense and the pace that they play with. And it's not to say that Cale Jacobson's incapable of running the offense, but they're obviously much better when he's out there, and he's good for his own 1 to 2 stupid turnovers a game where he just essentially throws the ball right out of bounds, and he did that against Creighton because of miscommunication or whatever. But the energy the offense has when he's on the court initiating everything is really good, and it's maybe as good as it's been during Fred Hoiberg's time here.
Yeah, I mean, when he went to Rhode Island, he did an interview with us when he came back to Nebraska, and that league, you got to fight for your food, and that's a tough A-10 league, and I think it hardened him a little bit, and it's helped his game. But I mean, real quick, the thing that has surprised me the most is the defense. Like, I just how much of a staple of consistency that's been, and you got to give Nate Lenzer a ton of credit. I don't know how much longer. Not that Fred wants to keep him from a head coaching job, but it feels like at some point Nate's going to get his shot as an HC. And if you ever listen to him do an interview, like he's on the radio this week, like that guy is so intense, and that's part of the reason why you're not seeing them reading their own press clippings, to use an old phrase or anything like that. I mean, they do seem to very much be about, okay, what's next? That was nice, but we know if we lose the next one, you don't want to throw away what you've just gained.
Real quickly, each one of you, highest seed that you think Nebraska could. And I want to talk about this as a tangible seed here. Highest seed that Nebraska could potentially get in the NCAA tournament, Schaefer.
I mean, it would be
one. Give me a one.
From the joke standpoint, a 1 is the highest seed that they could get. Yes, if they don't lose a game,
what
I feel
16
confident
seed are they going to be?
I think they could max out at a 3.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's the most likely. I think the Big Ten is really tough. But if they can finish in the top 4 in the Big Ten, you have the wins that they already have on the schedule. I mean, I think a 3 is realistic for them, which I just said out loud. A 3 seed for Nebraska basketball is realistic. I'm going to stop talking now.
Bruntz?
But
3.2?
Yeah.
22-9 is what I saw some of the metrics were this week. I mean, if you're 22-9 in the Big Ten,
so 11-9 over the next 20, then basically.
Yeah.
4, and that's 2 wins against New Hampshire and North Dakota. You would expect.
That's
so 9-9. The rest of the way
8-9 in the Big.
Oh yeah, 9-9 would be. Yeah.
It would be 11. Well, yeah, sorry, math's hard.
This is great. And you wanted to go with the metrics. Keep on it, Bruntz. Keep on it. You are the metrics.
Yeah.
Sorry.
4, 5.
Yeah.
Probably where I'd put it.
Yeah, I mean,
4 and 5 in Buffalo.
The highest they could be a 3. I'll predict a 6 when it's all said and done. You'll take that, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, I think you would. I think they top at 4. I think 4 is about where I feel is best case scenario. Okay, there's going to be a point where some level of adversity hits this year that they can't overcome. I mean, it's just law of averages. At some point, it's going to go bad.
They could just keep winning, Grant.
Now who's negative?
It could.
I'm with Schaefer. I'm at a 3. I'll say at the end of the year, I'll just, if we throw out a prediction, I'll say they're 5. They're in the ill-fated 5 versus 12. Gosh, we don't want that. But I think 3 is tangible. I absolutely think 3 is tangible. So we will see. All right, when we come back, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to do some drawing for some free beer. I mean, everybody likes free beer, right? Okay, I figured you probably did. So
Yeah.
we're going to do 3 winners now, then 3 winners at the end of the show. Taking a 5-minute break, so grab a beer if you need one. And then when we resume here in about 5 minutes, Lincoln Arneal is going to be joining us. He is one of the best when it comes to covering college volleyball, and especially the Nebraska volleyball beat. He's been doing it for many, many years. And we're going to have the unfortunate conversation of why Nebraska is not in Kansas City, but obviously an impressive historical season in the first season for Danny Busman Kelly as the leader for the Nebraska volleyball team. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much. We're going to be announcing some winners here in just a moment.
There
we
you
go.
go.
Hour 2, Huskers live on tap out here at Kros Strain in La Vista. Big thank you once again for coming on out here. I want to wish you and your family and everybody who made it out here a very happy holidays. And also, again, a big thank you to Kros Strain Brewing, Bobby Cross, Scott Strain, our guy Doug, Jeff, and then Tammy, who is over at the bar taking care of you. Make sure you take care of them. They are fantastic hosts. We love being out here. They are the very best. Hopefully you've enjoyed a Cornhusker Crusher, the official craft beer of the Huskers. And don't forget, tomorrow right here out at Kros Strain, they've got what is one of their coolest events, especially during the holidays. It's called their 12 Jams of Christmas, some of the most creative beers you are going to have. And it involves jams too. So it's awesome. We are excited to be joined by a guy that this is the first time I'm meeting in person. We've talked in 3D.
That's weird.
Yeah. We've talked many, many times over the phone and various radio shows. It's a guy that when it comes to volleyball, I just kind of sit back and I listen, I learn, I get educated, and the passion, but also just the top-rate coverage that Lincoln Arneal has for the sport of college volleyball, but also especially on the Nebraska beat. You've covered it for Journal Star.
Way back in the day, yes.
World Herald.
World Herald most recently.
Yep. And then now you've got the podcast, but you're also
Husker Max.
Husker Max. Yep. And it's the Volleyball State podcast.
Correct.
And it's, again, if you are a volleyball nerd or just someone who loves the sport and you love Husker volleyball, I don't know why you'd listen to a different podcast. In fact, you shouldn't. Shame on you. But Lincoln, we thought we'd be talking about this historic run for Nebraska volleyball that is culminating in Kansas City here in 2 days as the Final Four gets ready to get underway on Thursday night. And I want to start with Sunday for Nebraska. There was obviously this feel of destiny for this team to see this thing all the way through. So many great storylines in Danny's first season as coach, but watching this team come together, different stars each night, and player goes down with injury, someone else steps up, and the machine rolls on. When you looked at Sunday, and you've seen many, many Nebraska high leverage games, how surprised were you with what you saw for 5 sets in that matchup?
It was surprising the fact that Texas A&M did something that no team had really been able to do all year, was out physical Nebraska and really take it to and beat Nebraska at its own game. I mean, Nebraska had, like you said, bludgeoned teams with their balance, with their talent across the board too, and that's what A&M really is able to do. They had both outside hitters, their opposite. They had middle blocker. They were able to all attack Nebraska from multiple angles, and I think that put Nebraska on their heels a little bit. But I think this wasn't the same Nebraska team that we've seen for the last couple of months too. I think that's another. You hate to bring that up because it sounds like an excuse, but Nebraska was not performing at their peak level at the moment where they needed it the most.
Well, I mean, I think in the wake of all this, Nebraska fans are looking at everything and looking at the talent and thinking, if not now, when?
Well, I think, Jeff and I have talked about this all year on our podcast. I mean, you can be dominant during the regular season. You can own the Big Ten. It always takes luck to win a national title too, whether it's the other team not converting a match point in the 4th set of the national semifinal, or if it's going on a 10-0 service run. It always takes a little bit of luck, and Nebraska just it felt off. I think you look what happened during the past week. Your backup setter breaks her pinky finger. She's out. Again, your backup opposite steps on a ball during serving practice during warm-ups, and she hobbles to the bench. Done, and your conference player of the year setter is dealing with flu-like symptoms. So it always takes luck. So I think, If not now, next year. I think Nebraska has the pieces to be in contention every year, and that's all you can ask. Everything within your control. It takes how the brackets breaks. I mean, Nebraska, that was probably the only number 3 seed of all the regional finals that Nebraska has that much trouble against. Wisconsin. Maybe there's a different Wisconsin team that we saw on Halloween, but it's you need that luck, and that's the one thing. Just one thing after another added up, and it was not on Nebraska's side this year.
Lincoln, I heard this said earlier in the season, and I want you to sort of expand on this thought, that with John Cook retiring, handing the reins over to Danny Busboom Kelly, obviously, as everyone knows, former Husker. But to me, in every sport, when we see that, even if it's a hand-picked successor, you're always going to have those growing pains. There's always going to be that transition. And we saw this thing go as smooth as possible, given the schedule early in the season, that it would have been understandable to see a bump along the way, but we didn't even see that. In fact, we saw dominant volleyball pretty much from the get-go, and then they go on that incredible run through conference play where they don't even drop a set. Somebody had said that Danny Busboom Kelly might even connect better with this team than what John Cook, a legend, a Hall of Famer, everything he recruited that team.
Yeah.
If that's the case, Danny Busboom Kelly connecting with this team, empowering these amazing female athletes, where do you see that connection maybe be even stronger?
Yeah, I think that, I think definitely when you have a female coach, a former player, and someone who is 40-year-old as compared to a 68-year-old John Cook, you're going to have better connections with your student athletes just because of those factors. I think that just as Danny is a former player, she knows what it takes to play at Nebraska. John built the culture. He knows what it takes to, but have someone to be in their shoes and deal with the pressure, the expectations, and kind of just the celebrity that comes with being a Nebraska volleyball player. I think that connection too. But to me, it's also the way that Danny approaches the sport too. In interviews with her, listening to her in her radio interviews, and just talking with her. She brings joy. That's what she wants from her players, and I think that just kind of builds a better connection too. That it's tough, and you saw it. Yes, it's on Sunday. Just the emotion, the emotional drain from them. That it's tough to play at that high a level and the expectations, and you feel like you've disappointed. But if you don't play with that joy up to that point too, then you do look at this season as a failure. And I think it's not a failure of a season for Nebraska.
Portal's open right now for volleyball, which is wild.
Open for a week.
Oddly and interestingly enough, I think you could make a pretty good argument that the schedule is more screwed up in volleyball than potentially college football when you have teams that right now have players that are entering the portal. Or does Nebraska go in there and get anybody, or do they sit with what they have right now?
I think there's two situations. I don't think Nebraska is going to be active because, one, I think the talent level is down this year. So far, there will be other players that enter from teams that are still competing, and I don't know if everyone from the regional round is in there yet too, but you look at some of the names that are entered, yes, there's a lot. Sully Davis from BYU, she just committed to SMU today, but there's not a lot of high level. I love Jess Musics, Mimi Collier's, Kennedy Martins. There's a lot of setters in there, but there's not a lot of attack pin hitters that are different. So I don't think that Nebraska needs that. I think Nebraska's roster as is should be set for the next year. I think they dip in the portal for two reasons. One, if someone leaves. I think if Nebraska has one or two people that may leave, that's when you go in and kind of fill in those holes too. Also, if what their roster plans are next year with their redshirt. If they're going to redshirt someone, they may need to bridge a gap to get to that. So I don't think Nebraska is going to be a super active player. They're always very selective with what they need, but given their roster, how it's built, and what they have coming back, they are not going to. I don't think they'll be super active. That's not to say they're not going to be involved, but given it what we know right now, they're not desperate.
Is there anyone you think could leave?
Yes. I think this. I don't like to do a lot of speculation because I don't know what's going on in the conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
But I think Skylar Pierce has been kind of the name that a lot of people point to. She's a redshirt freshman. Didn't get a lot of playing time this year, and you look at Toria Sigler's kind of in position to take over that Taylor Landfair role. So, but again, we said the same thing about Kennedy Orr a couple of years ago too. Like, oh, she's going to leave. She's going to want to run her own program. They have a lot of connections too. So I don't know what her motivation is. She's in position to do that too. And then the other one that I think is a possibility, maybe someone like Ryan Hunter. So someone who redshirted this year too. They brought in Virginia Adriano. She only has eligibility is a myth at this point. It's a concept, I should say. It's a concept. So who knows?
Yeah.
But she allegedly only has 2 more years left. So I don't know. I mean, but again, you watch them interact with their teammates. They have great connections. Is that enough to outweigh that? And also, you talk about showing up with bags of money. I mean, Nebraska volleyball players are compensated probably better than almost everyone, unless you're an All-American caliber. But the second, third tier players at Nebraska are compensated better than anywhere else.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of Grant's question there, and I'm glad you finished your thought with that exact terminology as far as the bags of cash and everything, because if we're looking at traditional thinking when it comes to the transfer portal in basketball, the transfer portal in football, I think we always look at 2 factors. One, what's your current playing time given where you are as a freshman or a sophomore? And what's your opportunity elsewhere as far as earning potential?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like volleyball can be unique, and especially at Nebraska, because of what you just said right there, that your second and third tier players are going to be compensated, and you're almost kind of waiting your turn. And when you talk about the culture there, I said it again, culture. I know it's thrown out there all the time, but the culture, but maybe more importantly with the Nebraska volleyball program, that machine, that I feel like if you're not a major impact player right now, as long as you see a path that you could be even for a year, that could be worth staying. Is that fair to think?
Yeah. I think too. It depends on what you see as your future. Again, go back to the Kennedy Orr example too. I mean, she saw her role. I mean, she was fine with being a serving specialist, being a good teammate. Luckily, Nebraska didn't need her because Bergen Riley stayed healthy.
Right.
But I mean, you need to have 2 setters on your roster no matter what. So I think that if Ryan Hunter is fine with her role, she sees a path where she saw what roles Ali Czech got this year too. That's kind of maybe where she slides in. And sees a path for her. And well, from what all fans saw from her during the spring, that she is an explosive athlete. And I think to keep her off the court next year would be was not a crime, but it would be a misuse of her talent, I would say. So I think that there's definitely, if you can see a path too, and I mean. And also being part of a Nebraska volleyball player, it depends on what your motivation is. I mean, you're a celebrity no matter where you go. I mean, Carrie Leinbach, redshirt freshman, is getting her face is on billboards on the interstate too. So it's, even if you're not playing, you're still a celebrity in the state of Nebraska.
Lincoln, let's go macro here for a little bit and talk about just the growth of the sport and where it's going right now. Nationwide, you have 2 professional league teams here in Omaha. We don't know the numbers back from Texas A&M, Nebraska on ABC, but we do.
1.2 million. They released it in the last hour or so.
Okay, perfect. So 1.2, is that that's more than Kentucky, or is it equal? It's relatively equal to the.
I think it's right around the same. It's the most watched regional, and Nebraska also had the second most. Their Friday night was like 600 something. I forget the number, but that was the second most match of the weekend.
Anyway, long story short, the numbers on the TV side of things are fantastic. What's the next step for the growth of the sport? Like, where do things go from here, and what role does Nebraska play in that?
Well, I think what the next step is literally this weekend too. You don't have Nebraska, you don't have Texas, you have Wisconsin, which is another big name. You don't have Penn State, you don't have Stanford. I think this weekend is going to be very important for the growth of it. I hope that just because those big brands aren't playing doesn't mean that people won't tune in. So I'm hoping for big numbers, ratings. Hopefully people will show up. I know there's a lot of Husker fans that probably have tickets they don't want to use. Hopefully those get sent or sold or given or whatever, bequeathed to whomever, to someone to use this week, because I think it create a great environment in the T-Mobile Center is going to be is something that's necessary. So I think this weekend is a big test of where the sport is at as a whole, because you're missing a lot of those top level brand names. So I think, like I said, I think that's the next step too, and then we can look at it, because parity is a dumb word to think it sometimes, but I think you have more teams that are in contention that'll get more fan bases into it. More people have that local tie, so it's not just when Nebraska doesn't make it, no one cares. So I think this weekend will be a big test.
You're tapped into the fan base here as well, and you made me think of something right there of when you so eloquently use the word bequeath to. And I was at my son's hockey scrimmage last night. I was listening. There was a table next to me of some moms that had went to the college volleyball or to the Lincoln Regional, and they were going to the college volleyball Final Four. And there was a bunch of them that already got tickets, already got their hotel arrangements, and they talked about how they didn't want to give up the tickets. They still wanted to go, but there was a couple of them that were so still raw with the emotion of Sunday that they just didn't know if they could put themselves through it. But is that sort of that testament of the Nebraska fan base? When I think of LSU and College World Series, when even when LSU is not in the College World Series, you'll still see LSU fans and a pretty decent swath of LSU fans. I mean, do you expect to see that in Kansas City where there'll be still some Nebraska fans just because this is how much the state loves the sport?
Oh, for sure. And plus, I mean, it's in Kansas City, which that helps. If we were talking Tampa,
if it's in Tampa, probably
not so much. But it's in Kansas City. It's going to be pretty decent weather, probably. I think that there'll still be a very large Nebraska contingent. Who they root for, that'll be really interesting to see whether because I mean, they got Nebraska's rival in Wisconsin. They've beat a couple of these teams. Do they root for Pitt? Dan Fisher went on social media and tried to make an appeal to welcome Nebraska fans to their side, or they don't like Texas A&M. But you get the former Nebraska assistant coach Craig Skinner at Kentucky. So I think there will be a good showing for Nebraska fans too. They'll feel a little sad maybe, but once the volleyball starts, they'll be like, oh yeah, we still got high level stuff going on.
Did you see or talk to Trev on Sunday at all?
Oh, I saw him. I arrived to him at the same time at the Devaney Center as Sunday and walked in. I didn't talk to him. I never ever met Trev, and he I don't know. I should say I've talked to him a couple times, but I don't think he knows who I am. And he was getting harassed by other people too. So I'm like, sure, you can do your thing, Trev. I won't bother you.
Right. If you were to look at this program now with Danny Busboom Kelly and just the future of it, I think we all got a pretty solid glimpse. And kind of going back to what Grant said, if not now, next year. This almost seems like a silly question because I think it's pretty obvious what the lure is to Nebraska. But if Nebraska is to make sure that they're not resting on their laurels, do you look at this program from all of the – we'll talk about the behind-the-scenes folks too, not just the coaching staff and not just the players that you see every day, but we're talking about the staffers that are doing that behind-the-scenes work, that are making sure that they're not just sitting back and saying, hey, we're Nebraska, you're going to come here. They're not just sitting back on that tremendous NIL deal that they have with Nebraska Crossing and other donors, that they're continuing to be innovative on how they build that roster. Pretty confident that that's the case with this program because that's just how they operate.
Yeah, you talk to the staff, you talk to the assistant coaches as well too. I think they're always striving to stay relevant because they know that everyone's trying to knock them off their perch. I think the most important person is Lindsay Peterson, who is the director of volleyball operations. She's the engine that runs that machine too. So I think that was probably to me the most significant carryover from the John Cook era, that to keep that intact as well too. But I think the other people, it's going to be interesting. We talk about players transferring. Our assistant coaches sticking around too, because this is the staff that Danny kept on. Jalen Reyes is a big name as far as coaching circles. He went on and talked with Terry Pettit on his podcast that he's happy being here too, but is that allure of being a head coach going to call some point someday? What's in Kelly Natter's future as well too? And I think they found a good assistant in Brennan Hager, who did I think a very good job with their middle blockers this year too. So it's not just players that leave, but when you're at the top, they want other pieces that are attractive.
Lincoln, who hoists the trophy on Sunday?
I still think it's Kentucky. Kentucky, to me, even going into the tournament, Nebraska, Kentucky were 1-2. I think in my initial pool, I had Kentucky losing to Nebraska, but their combination of Brooklyn DeLay and Eva Hudson at the left pin hitter is, I think, the top two attackers that any team has. Pitt has Olivia Babcock. They'll do great. Mimi Collier at Wisconsin. We saw the weapons that Texas A&M has, but just their combination, they can attack from anywhere. And they've really stepped up their defense, and Cassie O'Brien's really settled in from when Nebraska saw them on August 31st. And in Nashville, they've really improved. They've beaten A&M. They did lose to Pitt, but I think that they're playing elite volleyball right now. I think that SEC tournament really helped them to get them at the level they need to be.
We're going to bring Shafe Bruntz and Brian Christopherson back here in just a moment. But while we still have you here, Lincoln, if we're looking at the players maybe that we don't know of quite yet, maybe it's Sigler, and we saw what she did on Sunday, but some of the players that you expect to make that huge jump into next year to re-solidify this thing for Nebraska, if they're to make a run at a national title in 26, who are the names that stick out to you?
You saw a good glimpse of it on Sunday. Manayo Obeche, she's going to probably, she's got the next 1 foot in the Rebecca Alex spot at middle blocker too. I think get her some more time as well too. I'm excited to see what Kenna Kogo could do as well. She redshirted again. We saw flashes in the red-white scrimmage. She is explosive. She's more. It's kind of nice they have two middle blockers. She's in the Andy Jackson kind of model, whereas Obeche is in the Rebecca Alec, where a little more physical, stronger, whereas Kogo's a little more quicker. Mm-hmm. So I think that those two are going to be very important as well too. But I think Sigler's also going to be the one who has to take that next step too, because Nebraska, you need to have multiple pin hitters that can terminate, and that was a spot where Nebraska struggled at times this year.
This is going to sound like a really bad question because of how good she is. Can Harper Murray get better? Has she maxed out? What's the for Andy Jackson, for Harper Murray, and for Bergen Riley? What's the next level that they could potentially achieve?
Well, Nebraska, Harper Murray has another level she can go, but Nebraska doesn't need it because they have so many weapons. Yeah. Again, you saw a little bit of on Sunday when Nebraska's other parts weren't working. Harper Murray had a career high 25 kills. So I think she does. Jeff and I talk about this a lot on our podcast. Our one wish is for the pin hitters to be able to tool the block. So hit the ball off the outside hand of the opponent's block for an easy kill too. A lot of the time they hit it straight into the block or they go high hands, but that's the one thing I think if Harper Murray wants to evolve, she's a first team All-American.
Right. That's why I said it sounded silly to ask.
But I do think, she can take a next step. Average 4 kills per set too, but Nebraska doesn't need her to, but she does have that potential. And I want to see her tool more kills off that block.
Lincoln Arneal, one of the very best. Again, check out, it is the Volleyball State podcast with Husker Max. He and Jeff Sheldon are fantastic with all things college volleyball, especially on the Husker beat. You're going to be out there in Kansas City, though, right?
Yep, heading there tomorrow morning. I'll be there Thursday night. I probably might watch the final back here in Nebraska, but I will be on site the next couple of days.
All right. Sweet. Are you a barbecue guy?
Oh, yeah.
So what's the go-to out there?
I don't know. I got to go to, is it
Q39?
Q39.
Yeah. My first sampling of that was at the Nebraska-Cincinnati game at Arrowhead, and we had it cold because we had some traveling issues. It was still amazing.
It's still good. It's good.
Yeah. So if you can have a good cold,
you can't go wrong.
Right. Lincoln, awesome. Thank you for making the trip over here. Appreciate it. Always great to talk with you, and have fun out there in Kansas City, man.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Sweet. Brian Christopherson, Michael Bruntz, and Michael Schaefer. Yeah, you guys get your ears over here because we're going to be
here
talking.
Here comes BC. Thanks, Lincoln.
BC was already ready with it. As soon as I gave the 5-minute warning, he was already up. We had the laptop ready to rock and roll here. We're going to get back into Nebraska football talk as far as the matchup in Vegas, because I don't know about you, Grant. This thing has been very
there's
just no expectations. Everyone's like, they're going to get smoked on New Year's Eve, but hey, we can start our New Year's Eve plans watching some college football, watching Nebraska in a bowl game. That'll be fun, but they're going to get smoked against Utah. I'm curious if Schaefer, if BC, if Bruntz, if yourself, if we think there's any type of path to victory. And Brian, I'm sorry, since you're the first one to say
I know,
yeah. I'll speak for Schaefer, Bruntz, and BC.
Yeah, thank
3-1.
Thank you.
Does it matter if they win this game at all?
Yeah.
Why?
Ranked opponent?
I always say we talk about this team 365 days a year. Yeah. We get excited when there's like an open practice that we can watch in the spring or something. So when you only have 13 data points, every one of them matters. And it always shapes perception, like how you play. By
the way, your teammates over there are awful. They're just sitting there in the doorway just smiling at you saying, hey, you got it. Keep going. Here they come. No, keep going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail you there.
Yeah.
No, I think it does. Obviously, a lot of things are going to change. Rob Orich isn't involved in the play calling or anything here. I think that's good, by the way. I think he should have a observing role if that
Yeah.
it feels like where you can kind of see how some of these players react, how some of the coaches react, and kind of do it that way. So, I get the question, but I just think I always see how fans react, win or lose to games, and it ends up mattering the next day to them.
On the 365th day, too.
Yeah.
As you said, we
Yeah.
There
do.
you go.
And you bring up Orich, and guys, it's probably a fair enough time to talk about that. We talked a little bit about Jeep Wade there in the first hour, but Rob Orich, as BC mentioned, he's not going to have a hands-on role in this bowl game and in bowl prep, but he's obviously tasked with getting this defense more solid, especially in the front seven, making sure that you're getting back to taking away the run. But just from what you guys are hearing, his track record, he's had some successful short stints, kind of an up-and-comer defensive coordinator. Overall fit initially, what was your guys' reaction with this hire?
No, I think if you look at the through line on the hires they've made so far, it's a quick turnaround. Like that's the idea. Like I think that's what you have to kind of keep in mind is, the conversation about is this a reset, is it not? Rob Orich at San Diego State 1 year turned things around very quickly. I think that's the hope that he can bring to Nebraska is you move that along real quick. With you had portal guys, but you find something that kind of clicks there. And even Jeep Wade, I mean, same way. At Georgia Tech, it's not an overhaul, but you've got guys that you feel good about in the program. How do you kind of bring that guy in, coach him up? And I think that's the hope. So, I think especially on defense too, things are trending in a not great way.
Yeah.
How do you kind of bring somebody in that can switch things around quickly? And I think that's the hope with him is you find a few guys out of the portal, you develop what you have, and then you're able to go in 2026.
Shape, we talked a little bit earlier about how a four-man front might fit Nebraska's personnel a little better. Can you explain how that works for guys like Keona Davis and Williams Nwaneri? How a four-man front could potentially allow them to excel if you believe that that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on sort of how everything else is around them, right? Like, and then in what way do you want to utilize them? The thing that's interesting if you switch to a four-man front is some of these guys aren't like traditional defensive ends. They're more your kind of classic 3-4 or 3-3 front. And so, a Williams Nwaneri, I think, can play in any front. Like he's that kind of talented of a guy. The question is, are you going to get more juice if he's inside as a defensive tackle in a pass rushing situation? Are you going to get more juice if he's outside? And so I think some of it is just trying to take whatever it is that you want to do, put people in the best position for success. I mean, Bruntz was talking about Rob Orich. I think the thing that excites me is, you have a guy like that, and it's like, yeah, he was at San Diego State and he's been at different places, but everywhere he's been, they've been good.
Yeah.
And so, you can only be as good as you can be at the level you're at, and he's been great everywhere he's been. And so that's at
Quickly.
least, that's exciting to me. And then, as Bruntz knows, my coaching crush is Jason Eck, who's down at New Mexico right now. And he was previously at Idaho, where Rob Orich was his defensive coordinator. And they immediately turned around one of the most dormant programs in college football and had success there. And as much as I want to just give all the credit to Jason Eck, a big part of it was Rob Orich's defense. So when he goes to San Diego State, and in year one, they have this sort of defense that college football people are just raving about the different things that they're doing. I mean, that's interesting. That's exciting. I mean, if you're going to make change and you're going to go like, say this for Matt Rule, he went about as far different as he could from John Butler by going and getting someone that he's never worked with,
Right.
Rob Orich, that doesn't necessarily have any direct ties to Nebraska, and he's just like, hey, let's go make this thing happen. And
Kind
so
of Tony White-esque.
and Tony White in that first year was a huge success for them. And I think there's a reason if you're going to gamble, go get someone who's had success and maybe some players come with it too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe the unspoken part of all of this right now is if some of these coaches have your players that are attached to them, that Nebraska can use guys in the front seven, certainly on that linebacking room, that come along from San Diego State, that could certainly make things easier.
Before I bring up this next point. Autumn would get really mad at me if I didn't mention this. We do have, if anybody, as we're wrapping up here, we got about 25 minutes left here. We do have pen and paper. If you have any questions that you want to ask our experts over here, any questions before we do wrap up, feel free. It's right there, and you can leave them there. We'll make sure we ask those questions to our guys here. But fellas, the other thing about this bowl game coming up, and I'll use the Donovan Jones example. He flashed in that Pinstripe Bowl, and you knew he was going to be a part of Nebraska's defensive plans sooner rather than later, but he ends up just winning a spot early in the season and never relinquished. Is there, you mentioned Isaiah Mosey. Is there a guy that you guys are curious about that you know is going to get some more reps and that has a chance to really maybe showcase what he can do and parlay that into the following season into potentially a starting role?
Oh, I mean, Mekhi Nelson obviously is in that conversation too. We'll see how those reps at running back split up. I know Dawson Merritt was dinged up.
Yeah.
But you think of guys sort of like that. And we've talked about it in the first hour, but a lot of those defensive linemen, even though they've played some, it's like, what do you see out of like a Cade Petchock after basically, 12 to 15 practices extra, and he kind of has some time to get his body right after the season, his first season as a college player. A guy like him, Williams Nwaneri, all those guys like Keona Davis, 3 or 4 or 5 guys you could name on the defensive line. Petchock would be one that I believe a lot in, and I think he can take a big step next year, even as only a second-year college player. So he'd be someone that you could hope like flashes in this game, sort of like Vincent Shavers did last year. Remember that first half he had in the Pinstripe Bowl?
Yeah.
And that was sort of a springboard for him into this year. So yeah, you hope a couple of those guys show up like that.
Bruntz, what should Nebraska fans expect from this team? Like, are moral victories okay in this bowl game if you get a couple of guys to flash and you lose by 10? I mean, what's acceptable?
No, they're not. I do think you need to see a competitive defense, especially. You have a lot of moving pieces. It's interesting. Like you compare last year's bowl game where it was like everybody at Boston College was like, "I'm done. I'm opting out." With Nebraska this year, I think you need to see some of those young guys flash a little bit. Merritt's a great one. I think that was immediately the first person I went to is a guy who had not played much, been battling injuries.
That's why I answered first.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. But I do think like that's a guy that you want to see play well against Utah. You have a very good opponent in front of you, a guy that looks ready for the moment. You're going to count on next year. Like that's just the reality of Nebraska's situation right now at linebacker. So, I do think you're going to need to see a few of those guys pop. I don't know that just seeing that though is enough. Like you have to change at quarterback, obviously, but that was going to be the way it was going to be anyways, regardless of the portal or not. Latif's going to have to come in and play well. You're going to need to see some young guys that you can count on, but I don't think it's a moral victory point of view because you got to have some momentum going into the off season, and you've lost 2 games very badly. You got to stand up and be counted here in Vegas against Utah.
And I hope Latif gets a full runway where he's healthy a week or so at least before this game, because it's still sort of lingering, it sounds like, with that injury.
Right. We even heard it today. He wasn't practicing.
Yeah.
I mean, so that was interesting too, especially in contrast to what we heard a week ago that maybe he was getting ready to go. Like, I mean, if they run him out there for a week after Christmas, after Christmas break and heading into that game, it's not necessarily confidence inspiring.
Because we could name off 10 different guys, but QB1 with the conversation we've had today.
And then if Jalen Gramstad's starting the game, it's essentially
different conversation.
Oh, granddad. Boys, okay, Bruntz, you kind of hinted to it a little bit. What's the path to victory here? If Nebraska is able to outdo Utah, and let's remember, this week took on a different tone because of Kyle Whittingham officially announcing the retirement. So now there's more momentum and more incentive with the Utah side of it, on top of already being a pissed off team that they're not playing in the college football playoff. But if there's a path to victory here, guys, what is it?
I think it's controlling time of possession. I mean, it's kind of what Nebraska's done well when they've played well this year is you minimize possessions, you are able to grind away at the run game somehow, which is a challenge, obviously, because Emmett Johnson's not in the picture. But how are you able to kind of control the tempo of the game? I mean, that's the thing that I think Nebraska, when they've been at their best this year, they've been able to do that. You keep Utah's very good rushing offense off the field. I think Nebraska's offense, whatever it looks like in this game, is going to have to be able to do something up front to feel like you can control the pace a little bit.
You got to also have great special teams play again. I mean,
Hey,
I think if
and that's been
I
That's
think if
been
they're
there.
going to have any chance in this game, you block a punt, you return a kick for a touchdown, something's got to come out of that group that sets you up, and then on top of it. And I don't know if they'll coach it this way or play it this way, but it's sort of the ultimate kitchen sink game. I mean, you kind of have to throw everything at them, and you got to get guys that are going to be willing to kind of give you everything they have. And you get opportunities to get off the field on third down. You got to be able to get off the field. You get opportunities to stay on the field on third down. You have to figure out how to get those yards. So those are areas where Nebraska, when they're successful, those are things that they do well. When they struggled against Penn State, when they struggled against Iowa, especially in that first half, when that was still a game before it had gotten away from them, you can't give up 3rd and 9. Like you just can't, not to a team like that. And if you get Utah on a 3rd and long, you have to get off the field.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's football 101. I mean, you get off the field when you have the opportunity, and you control possession and clock, like Bruntz said, keep their offense at bay that way.
When you guys are interacting with fans on your message board at Huskers 247? I mean, like, what's the vibe right now? What's the pulse of the fan base heading into this game?
Pessimistic. Is that fair? I don't know. I mean, there's definitely intrigue about the young guys, and if a few of them can step up and what TJ is going to do. But let's be real, this is not a matchup on paper that looks great. I think the Whittingham announcement that this is his last game. So there was sort of that thought, like a week or so ago, like, well, sometimes with bowl games, it's just about motivation, we've seen that in Nebraska bowl games in the past. I've seen Nebraska teams that were better than someone that weren't ready to play, like a Washington Holiday Bowl one year, where they lost 19-7. And then I've seen the other example where they beat Georgia. And I don't think Georgia was really ready for that bowl game. So, but that's kind of gone out the window. And so, I think most people see the spread and they kind of nod their head to it. I guess if you're looking for like glass half full stuff, and this is where it's at for that game, it's kind of a weird thing to be glass half full about. But when Phil Snow's talking about how guys like didn't even know the calls and stuff, that's obviously discouraging. But I like that there's at least an explanation, like that's like, okay, that at least that pairs with sucking, where you give up 77
He was
points.
brutally honest, which I appreciate.
So it's like, well, maybe if you can get guys dialed in, 11 guys on the same page, it looks a little better on defense.
Guys, in our last, what do we got? 11 minutes here, and I know maybe we need longer than that, and it's okay. We don't have a hard out here, but I do want to wrap things up with the ever so fun state of the program. I mean, end of the regular season. There's been a lot of changing pieces, even in the last 2 weeks. Things looked great. I mean, we've made reference to that USC game until Dylan goes down. That could have been a season-changing victory for Nebraska, and who knows what happens. We won't know, because unfortunately that did happen. We watched Nebraska get absolutely manhandled by a Penn State team that was still talented but was extremely down on their luck, and then just get absolutely smoked at home against Iowa and just out-physicaled in both of those games. So, Schaefer, if you're looking at your confidence level of where this program is headed, going into year 4 with Matt Rule, knowing that there's staff changes and even probably some more additions to this staff, but also what this roster looks like, how this team finds itself in the Big Ten moving forward. Where are you at right now going into 26?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it for me is just, do they know who they want to be? Like, if they have a clear indication of this is who we want to be and this is what we want to do and this is what we're working towards, that would probably be better than how 2025 kind of played out, where it felt like they wanted to be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they wanted to do this and they wanted to do that. Some of it is they've had another year to assess what NIL looks like in 2025 and then how they can spend their money in 2026. I don't have I'm stuck in this spot where I just they have so much they have to build. Like they need to hit correctly in a lot of different ways, and they haven't shown an affinity for being able to do that at this point in time. Now, if Rob Orich comes in and you're able to bring some guys from San Diego State and your defense can look better because of that, and some of your defensive linemen that stick around take a big jump. There's ways for Nebraska to play that way. I think they just have to determine this is who we want to be in the conference. I say this all the time. I don't know if everybody agrees with it. I understand that the people at ESPN may not agree with it. I think the Big Ten Conference is the best coach conference in college football. I think every single week, whether you're playing the worst team in the conference or the best team in the conference, you're going against guys that are really good at what they do and can isolate ways that make you look bad. And if your coaching staff isn't up to par, and we've seen coaching staffs here that just aren't, you get exposed.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes it's a matter of having people, and sometimes it's a matter of having coaches that can get guys motivated, ready to play, show up with game plans. I mean, the last time we did this event was before the Minnesota game.
Yep.
And I know what Iowa and Penn State look like. I would submit to you the most depressing moment for Nebraska football in 2025 was on Friday in Minneapolis when it looked like they didn't want to be there as much as Minnesota, despite the fact they haven't beaten that program since 2018. And so, a lot of it starts with Matt Rule having a clearly identified, this is who we are, this is what we want to be, this is what we're going to do on offense, here's how we're going to get there. If they have that, there's no reason they can't have some success in 2026. My fear is I don't know what they can draw off of within their own roster. They have changed so much in year 4. We don't know what they are. We know what they maybe want to be, but we don't know what they are. So I don't know. And it's a tough schedule. So here's hoping that they can have made enough changes that they can sort of figure their way forward.
By the way, out of all of us knuckleheads, Schaefer was the only one who took Minnesota to win that game.
It's
So
true.
listen to what he says. All right, Bruntz, what would you add to that as far as state of the program?
No, I think you got to find some dudes in the portal. I mean, that's the easiest reset. Like if you find a Trey Palmer in the portal, that makes things a heck of a lot easier.
We find a Trey Palmer at guard and tackle.
Seems like he'd be a little small.
Yeah.
Well,
Still
Is
run
he
by
still
Iowa,
waking
though.
up pissed off in the morning?
Yeah.
that's what I want. I want a guy who wakes up
Yeah.
pissed off and then he, takes care of the blind side.
I mean, you've got to figure out the quarterback spot, what that looks like. I do think there's a roadmap forward. Like Nebraska's got to be better up front. They know that. But yeah, I mean, it's the biggest question mark, I think, going into the offseason, as much as we focus on the defense, is what is Nebraska going to be offensively? Like, are you going to be a team that grinds it out with an Emmett Johnson type back? Are you going to be a team that can chuck it around a little bit? You've kind of had both looks at various points in the last year and a third. And that's the biggest piece to me is, you've got special teams handled. What does offense look like?
Yeah.
And I do think Rob Orich, what he's shown at other stops, they'll be okay on defense. I think they'll figure that out. But offensively, what's that going to look like? That's a big question.
BC?
Yeah, and can they be that team? I still think they're fragile. Like the USC game's an example where they played all right on defense for a lot of that. I know the rushing yards, but they held them down comparatively to other teams. But there was like a 6-play span, which Rules referenced a lot, where it's like it still feels like with this team sometimes one play, an explosive sort of nails them down, and then they can't like bow up and get off the field. And if you look at the red zone stats this year, I mean, maybe you have another win or two if you shift those even halfway on either offense or defense. Basically, last in the country in defense. So they're going to need a different mindset. Maybe Rob Orich can do that. And frankly, Rob Orich needs to be sort of like what the Eckler hire was on special teams. Like there's a lot riding on it, and so you're trying to go 3 for 3 on 3 major hires that could shift everything. your O-line coach in Jeep Wade, your DC, and Pat Stewart, I would say.
Yeah.
Being that guy who just sees it in this age of clutter in college sports, where he kind of sees the pathway, and it has the Billy Bean in his prime, like
Who's Fabio?
yeah, that type of stuff. Exactly.
He's a DH, right?
Yeah.
It's on base.
He gets on base. Thank you, Bruntz.
Yep.
Do you still watch Moneyball a lot, by the way?
Every night.
Okay, good.
It's like a warm glass oval team.
Grant, your thoughts, man.
I think for me, going forward, I can't really sit much higher than a 4. And it goes back to what Schaefer was saying, but it isn't just on the offensive side of the ball. It's everywhere, except for maybe special teams. And even that's relatively new. Nebraska just doesn't know who they are or what. I would argue they don't necessarily know what they want to be either, because you can say different things and talking about dragging people down into the deep waters in the fourth quarter with your run game and all these different things. But if you never do it, it's just talk. And so, for me, it's just there's a massive identity crisis for the program as a whole. And, the goodwill of Tony White's first season is very, very far in the rearview mirror. And what they're going to be this year is probably much, much different than a 3-3-5. So I don't know. I mean, you're not going to get anything probably coming up from your ranks developmentally that is going to be a surefire hit. And because Nebraska football, well, it's college football for one, and the place that holds in our country, and then additionally at the place Nebraska football holds in its state, you're not going to get a massive runway like Fred Hoiberg did after his reset to try to figure things out. So I'm sitting at a 4. I don't know if you can go much higher than that, just because to this point, the actions have not met the words. And that was probably, I think, for me going into this year, the biggest theme that you had is you had a lot of talk and now you had to back it up. And the longer we go with them not backing up the talk, the more frustrated the fan base will be.
Yeah, I think this season was one of incremental progress, and I think it needed to be bigger than that. I think given the schedule and the way the schedule for the most part, guys, played out was what we all had maybe thought, that this was an easier path. I mean, in Penn State
was down.
They were down, and we thought, well, that's the loss, but everything else. So the incremental progress that I would point to, obviously the third phase was huge. Getting special teams figured out was massive, at least. And if you hold on to Mike Eckler and that continues to be a strength of the team, that's great. You build off of that. But if you look at another area that I think, you could say they improved is the Marylands of the world, the Northwesterns of the world, the teams that you knew at the very least in your Big Ten peers that you had to beat in those games that used to be 50-50 games. He took care of business, but it wasn't by a convincing margin either. I just look at this program at a crossroads right now because of the way the season ended and the way that they were bullied around in a conference that, is a little bit more wide open with the West Coast teams in there. So you can be a little bit flashy, but you still cannot ignore the principles of physical football. And that was exploited more than anything that we saw this season. So I think this team, I think, Mike, you nailed it. Schaefer, you nailed it on the head. It's what you want to be. The identity of this team, figuring that out, and not only having the coaches to do that, but having the personnel to do that from development with high school guys and being able to use the transfer portal wisely, not just throwing money at a problem, but using it wisely. That's what I brought up the offensive line and the defensive line thing earlier, using the portal, not paying through the nose on certain guys, but being able to distribute that evenly to find guys that maybe are a freshman or a sophomore into it, that have some college football experience, that are maybe familiar with a system here or system there, that are a little further along development-wise so you can get that quicker fix. But boys, right now for me, it's a physical state of mind, and they're at that crossroads that if they lean into that, then I think that they can start to punch their way up towards that top tier. But until they do that, get whatever wide receiver you want, get whatever quarterback you want, get whatever safety or corner you want. In my opinion, it's all for naught until they fix those areas.
Yeah. And connected to all this, we're not supposed to do the whole thing where you're like, what's the schedule next year? I know it's like, well, that can change when you
right.
They play Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. You have a pretty good idea what they're going to be.
I don't think those teams are going to all of a sudden just going to hit the cellar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
the
and
other
Washington.
games also include Washington,
Yes.
Illinois, and
Illinois. I mean, all three of those teams could easily
I would
be
gladly
10-win
take
teams.
a Maryland and Northwestern over an Illinois and a
There is a
Washington.
Maryland.
Yeah, you get a Maryland.
Yeah, there you
Maryland's
go.
Oh, good. Okay, well, at least you got Maryland still. Thank God.
Sleep easy.
Yeah. So there's one conference, hopefully win right there. But yeah, and we'll see. And January 2nd, obviously, when the transfer portal opens up officially, we will see. Quarterback's going to be interesting to watch. Running back, what they want to do with this roster. And again, defensive line coach, too. A lot of things that are still sort of up in the air that we will see. But guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for being
again.
here.
Always enjoy talking with you fellas.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's good to clap for them. And Lincoln Arneal as well.
Yes,
Lincoln
thank you,
Arneal,
Lincoln.
the man. We're going to be doing this, I believe, in February, so stay tuned. We'll let you know when we're doing this again, but we will be doing it in 2026. Before we get out of here, we're going to give you a couple of final winners in our raffle tickets. We've got some shirts to give away, so we'll be doing that as well. But again, for Mike Schaefer, for Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson, Lincoln Arneal, Grant Hansen, myself, Nick Handley, we want to thank you all for coming out here, wishing you and your family a very happy holidays. And until next time, thank you for coming to Huskers Live on Tap. We'll talk to you later.